Replacing the fuel pump in a 96 Lexus ES300. I have never done this before. I've never replaced a fuel pump in any car, so hopefully I don't screw it up. Now, the pump I'm using fits 670 Lexus and Toyota vehicles from model years 2012 back to 1990. So even if you don't have a 96 Lexus ES300, if you have one of those vehicles, this video may give you an idea of how to replace the fuel pump in your car. First thing to do is disconnect the negative battery cable to kill power going to the fuel pump. Also take off the gas cap to relieve any pressure. You can hear that air escaping. Access to the fuel pump in my car is underneath the back seat, so I just have to grab it and pull straight up. Fuel pump assembly is underneath this cover. 3 Phillips head screws have to come off. Push that rubber grommet through the hole and move the plate out of the way. Pull the wiring harness off. 2 fuel lines. This one just has a rubber hose and this has a fitting that we have to break loose. Now, I don't want any of this dirt to fall down into the gas tank when I take the assembly out. Because this fitting hasn't been off in 26 years, I'm going to spray some penetrating oil on there and let it soak in for a while. This is my second attempt at breaking this fitting loose. The larger one is 19 millimeter, the smaller one is 14, and the first time I tried with just regular cheap wrenches, but I started to strip the 14 millimeter. So plan B was go to Home Depot and buy flared wrenches. So the larger wrench, the 19, I'm going to be pushing towards you, towards the camera, and the smaller one, the 14, I'm going to be pulling towards me. Hopefully this will break them loose without stripping anything out. There we go. Success. With these Husky wrenches from Home Depot, now that fitting is loose. So don't go cheap, you might strip the fitting. Now we have 8 screws around the outside. They are either 8 millimeter or Phillips head, and I'm going to use a socket, 8 millimeter socket. This should be loose. I might have to pry it up though. All right, moved a little bit. There we go. Now I have to be careful of the float, which is right there. There's the pump that I need to replace. I'm going to put a rag over that opening just to keep anything from falling in there. Now the replacement pump, this is a cheap one. This kit was only $17. And this same exact kit, which I bought for $17, this is what sold on 1A Auto's site for $35. So I found it for half the price as 1A Auto. That's what I'm using, and hopefully it's going to work out. Question now is, how do I get the pump out? First thing I'm going to do is take both of these clamps off and push down on the pump and pull it to the right. There we go. Pull that off. Now the only thing holding it on is a wiring harness, and there's a release tab right on top, and I can't get it with my fingers. Hold on. Try a pair of needle nose pliers to press down on that tab. And there we go. Now I need to take off the strainer, which I'm going to reuse. There's a little metal retaining ring on top. I need to pry that off. Oh, there it went. I don't know where it went, but it's gone. And now pry the strainer off. There we go. Take the hose off and we will compare the pumps, and they are an exact match. And the reason I'm replacing this pump is that I've been having an intermittent stalling issue with my ES300. And I have traced it to the fuel pump. So it's a $17 gamble and not that difficult to replace. It's much more difficult to film it than it is to actually replace it. So hopefully with the new fuel pump in, that will solve the stalling issue. Now I mentioned earlier that I'm not going to replace the screen, and I am not going to replace it. Number one, because this one is in good shape and it is not dirty, just a little bit of surface dirt right there. Put a flashlight behind it and you can see how clean it is. Also because I did look at prices for new filters, new screens, and I looked at some reviews, and there were a lot of people that had problems because the replacement screens were thicker than the original. That caused problems with the assembly fitting back into the tank properly. The thicker screens hit the bottom of the tank. So this one's in good shape. I know it's the right one, and I'm going to reuse it. Now I'll put the strainer on the new pump. It's pretty obvious where it goes back on. Just push it down firmly. I'm going to use a new retaining ring, one that came with the kit. And a pair of needle nose pliers opened just slightly, so I can push down on both sides of that ring. At least that's the plan. Well, that didn't work. I heard it hit the floor, now I gotta find it. Well, 5 minutes later, I found it halfway across the room. So I'm gonna put the fuel pump on the table so I can get more leverage. I'm gonna try again with the pliers, and it should snap on if I can get the pressure even. All right, that did it, it's on. Put it down on a solid surface, put pressure on both sides as evenly as you can, and just push straight down. Now looking at the rubber bushings that go on top of the filter, look at the difference in size. The new one may work, but it's awful big. I'm not even gonna try it. I'm gonna go with the original. Do I replace the hose? Nothing wrong with the original. It's pliable, there are no cracks, no splits at all. I know it's the right size and the right length. I am gonna reuse it. Slide that back on, plug in the wiring harness. Snap the original rubber bushing back in on top and push down on the filter so that bushing goes underneath the bracket. Then pull up on the filter a little bit so the bushing slides up into this cutout. Slide those clamps back up and I can spin it around and put them in the exact location where they were. And there we go. The new fuel pump is in. Getting ready to put the assembly back in, and one thing I haven't mentioned yet is the gasket on the underside of the assembly. Mine's in good shape. I just cleaned it up. There are no tears or no imperfections, so I'm going to reuse it. But that's something you need to check out on yours because it might tear when you're taking it out. It might stick, but mine's in good shape, so I'm going to reuse it. All right, putting the assembly back in, and this float was pointing towards the back of the car when I took it out, so I want to put it back in that same position. Got to work it around those fuel lines and get it lined up for those 8 screws, which will go back in next. I'm going to get them all started by hand and then finish up with the drill. I'm going to use a ratchet to double check those screws and make sure they're all tight. And if you use a drill, I would suggest you do this as well because they were not as tight as they could be. But now they are. Now, tighten down this fitting. And I'll say this one last time. There's a spot on here, right there, nice and shiny. That's where I started to strip it using those cheap wrenches. So you can screw up the whole deal right here if you use the wrong wrenches, the cheap ones. So this time I'm turning the 14 millimeter towards you, towards the camera, and I'm just gonna hold the 19 millimeter right where it's at. That's as tight as I can get it. Now the wiring harness back on, and we're just about ready to start this up. There we go. It's not gonna start without this hooked back up. Negative battery cable. And the gas cap back on. Now, here we go. Come on, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Now we gotta look for leaks. And looks like we're good. Yeah, dry as a bone. All right, we're in good shape. You see my speedometer is about 10 miles an hour. When I cranked it up, if you notice, it jumped up to 40. I think that's my vehicle speed sensor. That's the only thing I can figure. But fuel pump is working, car is running. Now I'll just have to wait and see if the new fuel pump solves my intermittent stalling issue. Only thing left to do now is put that cover back on and put the back seat back in. We need to get that grommet back through. And that just snaps in. Now this needs to spin around. Put the 3 screws back in. I'll put a couple of links down below in the description. One to the eBay page where I bought this pump. It was about $17 in free shipping. And also on that page, if you scroll down, there's a list of the 670 vehicles that this pump fits. And another link to the wrenches that I bought at Home Depot, the ones that I used to break the fitting loose on top of the fuel assembly without stripping it out. So be careful of that. Hope this helps. Thanks for watching.